Hi guys! In today's video we're going to have a look at cash flow, another chapter, and we have quite talked about cash flow in our previous chapters, so some of it might be already revision, but hopefully once we have a look at this unit, it's all going to um, give give the topic some kind of frame, and the different information that I've been giving you throughout the other lessons are going to fall in place. Okay, so let's get started. What we're going to have a look at is difference between profit and cash flow. We're going to talk in more detail about the working capital cycle. Now, another topic or another very important tool for business managers that we're going to learn are the cash flow forecasts. We're going to be able at the end to make calculations, to actually create cash flow forecasts, to analyze them, and apply them. In the end, by the end of the whole chapter, we're going to know the relationship between investment, profit, and cash flow, and look at some strategies for dealing with cash flow problems. So see what might be, the reasons for cash flow problems occurring and how to deal with those problems. So let's jump right in. What is cash flow? Can a profitable business go bankrupt? And the third question that we might need to ask ourselves, what is the difference between profit and cash? Okay, so let's address the three questions one by one. What is cash flow? So as it says, it's basically the flow of cash into the company, and at the same time, the flow of cash out of the company. So when we're looking at the cash flow, we're somehow seeing how much comes in, how much comes out, and what is the balance of the cash at the end of each month. What we can do with cash flow is somehow predict the cash flow in the future months based on different information that we have. And if we see that there will be more cash outflow, so more cash going out of the business than coming in, we might need to plan for those months by taking some or arranging some source of finance, such as over an overdraft, or a medium-term loan, or take some other strategies. The second question, can a profitable business go bankrupt? Now that would be a question for you to think about. Can a profitable business go bankrupt? If I'm making profit, logically, I should not go bankrupt. So why does it happen that a lot of businesses actually go bankrupt even though they're making profit? So this question is very related to the difference between profit and cash. Profit is the revenue minus costs, right? But then how come, what is the role of cash in that? It can happen, as I'm going to show you later on, that even though we sell a product and therefore we make a profit on the sale of that one product, we can sell it, for example, on credit. We can sell it to the customer now, today, but actually get paid later. And that is the sort of difference between profit and cash. We might be profitable in that specific month, but we're not going to get paid in cash. The cash is one of the, it is a current asset, it's the most liquid current asset. But at the same time, we might just, make profit, but at the same time, increase our debtors. So this is the main sort of difference, or difference between profit and cash. Profit is the theoretical markup that we make on every product, whereas cash is the actual liquid money coming into the business. When a customer purchases our product, the sales revenue from our product contributes towards paying the firm's costs. Okay? And anything that is made extra, so any sales beyond a firm's break-even point, generates profit for the business. And we know from the previous chapter that profit equals revenues minus costs. So anything, if we sell enough products to break even, to cover our fixed costs, and not just fixed costs, our total costs, then anything extra will be coming towards our profit. However, when making a purchase, customers might have several payment options. Like I said before, they might pay in cash, they might give you a check, they might pay on credit. So in theory, we're exchanging this little product, this little gift, for future cash. We're not exchanging it for cash today. We're exchanging for the idea of cash, for cash coming in the future. So when that happens, the paying by credit means that customers can buy now and pay later. For that reason, therefore, the business will make a profit today, but not receive any cash today. It might, if the debtor, if the customer is a reliable customer, we might get the cash later, but it might happen that we won't get the cash later also, even though we've made a profit. So this is basically the main reason that we are even distinguishing between profit and cash. So why is cash flow important? As we might find out in those several examples that we're going to cover, profit actually does not pay for bills and expenses of running a business. Okay, the fact that we have profit doesn't mean nothing, doesn't mean anything to our creditors. They want cash, so we need to have cash to pay for our short-term liabilities, for those short-term debts that we have. So cash flow actually relates to the timing of payments to workers and suppliers, and also the timing of receipts from customers. So how well do we have the payments planned? Okay, it's actually very much about time management, or the management of those payments, to actually know what's coming when, and to be able to deal with some cash deficiencies. So not having enough cash. Profit is important. I don't want you to think that profit is not important suddenly. No, it is important. However, we're thinking about profit, especially in the long term. So this is even the reason why, yes, companies do offer products on credit. Because if you offer credit to your customers, more customers will buy a product. So it is a reasonable strategy to offer credit options to your customers. But you're doing that for what reason? Because that is going to increase your profit in the long term. Perhaps more customers are going to come buy your product. But cash is important not just in the long term. It's always important. So it's important both in short term and long term, because you always need to be able to pay for your current liabilities, your short-term debts. As we saw in the asset test ratio, as we saw in the current ratio in the previous unit. So think about profit and cash, perhaps using these different icons. Okay, so profit is sort of the idea of cash in the future, whereas cash is actually cash in your hand. It's sure, it's something you're getting today. You can count with it. So let's have a look at an example. This is Bob. He has a market. He's selling fruits and vegetables. And he has his suppliers and customers that he's working with. So he orders his fresh supplies from his supplier for $500, and he is offered 1 month credit. So what type of source of finance would that be? He's actually using trade credit, yeah, just as a reminder, so that we are connecting some information, some knowledge that you've already learned. So he's offered 1 month trade credit. What happens next? The goods actually are selling super slowly. So he lowers the prices a few times, and he sells all of the vegetables, everything that he bought, for $300. So what can we say about the profit and the loss? What can we say about the net cash flow? So when it comes to let's say the revenue, we know that the revenue is $300. We know that the costs, super simple example, so let's just say that the only costs are the fresh supplies, so the costs are $500. Therefore, he's making a loss of $200. Okay, that specific month. But what about his net cash flow? How much cash does he have on him? So as you can see here, the answer is already given. His net cash flow at the end of the month is $300. He didn't make any money. He's suffering from a loss. But because of the fact that he is only supposed to pay for the fresh supplies in 1 month, he still has some time to make up for the loss. Working capital. Working capital, we've already talked about in our previous lessons when we talked about the sources of finance. So working capital refers to the cash or liquid assets available for the daily running of a business. We even have a more specific definition. We know that working capital is the current assets minus current liabilities. And basically, this refers to the available funds that we have and are using to pay for some immediate costs and expenditure. So that's the formula. And if we define each of the parts of the formula separately, then current assets would be assets that are liquid. We know that this would be stock, debtors, and cash. This would be all the assets that can be converted into cash in less than 12 months, right? And then the second one, current liabilities. Those are liabilities that are due in less than 12 months. So this is just our revision. This chapter, cash flow, is very much about working capital and managing working capital. So current liabilities, we can make use of different sources of finance. We can make use of overdrafts or creditors, but we need to make sure that we're able to pay for them. Here's also some definition of debtors, so you can copy that into your notes if you haven't done so yet. So why do we even care about the working capital? It's all connected, right? It's all connected to cash flow. If we have good working capital, then most likely we're working with our cash well. Most likely, if our working capital is sufficient, the current ratio is 2, the asset test ratio is above 1, then we're probably going to be fine. Okay, but at the same time, we don't want our working capital to be too big. So the importance of working capital comes because from the fact that every business needs that to be able to pay for its short-term debts. Yeah. Otherwise, it would lack liquidity. And now this is a new term. We've probably haven't ever defined it separately. So liquidity refers to how easily an asset can be turned into cash. Highly liquid assets can be converted quickly into cash. So we know from the way how we've been using the word liquid or illiquid in the past that we know that the most liquid current asset is actually cash itself. Then the second one would be debtors. The third one would be stock. The most illiquid would be long-term assets, right? But here you have the actually full definition. And we've a little bit touched on this also, but what happens if the company is not, or the business is not able to meet or pay the current liabilities? It becomes insolvent. And that means that it cannot actually pay or meet its short-term debts. If the working capital is not sufficient, if the cash flow is not planned carefully, and basically they will be forced to find cash in, let's say, some different ways. And I don't want to it to sound like I'm trying to mean like something illegal. No, absolutely not. But ways which would be not very appropriate for the business. We're gonna cover it a little in a little while. And the third term is liquidation. So this is what happens when the business is insolvent. It is actually forced into liquidation, and it basically means when a firm ceases trading, stops trading, because of its insolvency, the fact that it's insolvent. So it stops selling its products, and all of its assets are actually sold for cash. This happens like usually right before bankruptcy. Yeah. You are forced to sell everything just so that you pay for your short-term debts. And most of the time, if you do that, if you sell your assets, then that will lead to bankruptcy. So here, for those of you who have been asking, what is the difference between liquidation and bankruptcy? Liquidation is the stopping of sales, stopping of trading. Bankruptcy is already closing the business, or basically failing the business. And now I'm going to talk about like why does the lack of cash lead to liquidation and bankruptcy? Think about this. In the middle you have the cash, and here you have the different current liabilities. You have the short-term loans, you have the money to suppliers. And when you have insufficient cash or insufficient working capital that can be turned into cash, then you actually still need to pay for your short-term liabilities. So where do you get the cash from? You actually, these are the strategies I was talking about. You actually need to start selling your assets. So you sell your computer. Maybe you won't sell it for much because it's old already, but you will sell it because you need to pay for your debts. You might sell your long-term assets, whether it's some kind of office or even bigger buildings. And what do you think happens when you start selling assets? Especially assets that you really need for your everyday existing of your business. Assets which are basically, if you think about it, assets are capital expenditure. Yeah, and you need the computers, you need the office, because it's going to bring you benefits in the long term. It's going to support your profit and its growth in the long term. I mean, if you sell your assets, then most probably you will not have all the sufficient equipment and supplies needed to produce profit in the future, to provide services that the customers would need, and to basically get around this problem. And this is basically why we're learning this topic, because it's super important. So, how much working capital is needed? It's important to say that too little working capital will lead to insolvency or liquidation and eventually bankruptcy. But at the same time, too much working capital means that we will have too much finance tied up in current assets, and the money could be used elsewhere. For example, we could invest it into fixed assets or somewhere else. So this is going to lead to opportunity cost. We don't want to have just cash or current assets lying around, not being used efficiently. So this might lead to inefficiencies if you have too much working capital in your business. So the answer to this question of how much working capital is needed is actually going to depend on the length of the working capital cycle. So the working capital cycle, what that is, we're going to talk about in our next video to sort of break it all down so that it's not too much, but it's nothing super difficult. It's all very intuitive.